I'm grateful to be here, and it's fun to leave the cave sometimes, and it really is a cave. So I have an office attached to an old abandoned high school. It's about 12 to 15 minutes from my house, depending how urgent I'm feeling. And there's a Hoosiers-style gym attached to my office that just kind of sits there occasionally. Youth teams come through, and I'm just behind the locked door in the back. So I'm kind of like the gym custodian out there. I usually keep pretty random hours, pretty late hours, so it makes it more of a cave. But I've been writing for, since 2005, and I really resolved to start writing and wanting to be a communicator with the written word in 6th grade. And this came right after my attempts to quit school and to quit learning at all. So in the 5th grade, if you know who my father is, Doug Wilson, he's a prolific writer. He's so prolific that he doesn't know how many books he's written. If you ask him, he actually doesn't know. And it's because it's somewhere north of like 140, somewhere in there. Everything he's ever wondered about, he's studied and then just written it down and like worked through it on the page. He is extremely prolific. I am nowhere near that. I'm pretty medium compared to that. But he was the founder of the classical Christian educational movement in North America. My mom was an English teacher, also a writer. And so neither of them were thrilled when in the 5th grade I announced that I was done. And that was it. Like, hey, great, it's been good, peace out. Thank you, but I know everything I need to know at this point. And they very cheerfully disagreed with me. And I doubled down. I was throwing homework away. I went from a straight A student who just done his homework and his assignments without thinking about it to straight zeros. And it took a certain amount of coercion to get me back on the straight and narrow, back on the path. I don't really remember what happened. I remember all the misbehavior. I do not remember the correction at all. I just have a blacked out memory there. So I think it involved a Winchester belt. That'd be a guess, but I have no memory of this whatsoever. But they got me back on the path. It was kind of a double dip. One was my dad was the disciplinarian. My mom, because I also at the same time quit reading and just opted out, and I would just dip in and read portions of The Lord of the Rings or portions of the Narnia Chronicles, but I wouldn't even start at the beginning. I would just dip into my favorite stuff. My mom sat me down on the couch and read me a chapter from a book called King Solomon's Mines, and the chapter was called The Witch Hunt. And she started reading me this scene. All these warriors are lined up, and there's this witch dancing, and there are these drums beating, and the drums are beating and beating and beating, and all the warriors are stressing out, and she would point at one, and the guys on either side of him would grab him, disembowel him, and throw him on his face. And that's your mom reading this to you. At about that age, I was stressed out, and right when we were getting to one particularly graphic disembowelment, she just put the book down and said, "Yeah, you don't like to read anyway," and walked away. And so I'm sitting here with this disembowelment face down on the coffee table. I need to see how this thing ends. And so I grabbed the book and disappeared, and she got me flowing again, kind of like back into the written word. I'm very, very grateful to her. But it was right after that I announced, okay, I'm going to be a writer. I know what I'm going to do. I got through 5th grade when I tried to quit. Now I'm going into 6th grade. I know I'm going to be a novelist, storyteller, movies, so on. And my sisters laughed at me, and they were totally correct to do this. So it was the end of the world for me to try to write a 3-page paper. That was just not going to happen. So now I was announcing I was going to write hundreds of pages, and I was going to do it professionally. They laughed. I told them that I would do it. Not only would I do it, I'd do it under my initials. So later, fast forward, because of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien and all that stuff, fast forward till 2005 in a Random House, or my first book, wants to know what name I'm going to publish under. And I could not miss an opportunity to make my sisters wrong. So decades later, or decade and a half later, I needed to go under my initials just to win that argument with my sisters when I was in the 6th grade. I didn't know I was renaming myself, so I've become ND kind of for now since 2007 when the first book released. But I'm Nate, so you can feel free to call me Nate. Now, we've got some time together, and I'm excited about this because normally I get to do a flyover, and I have a lot more material even than I could fit into today. Things that I love to talk about and explore, and aspects of all things artistic and narrative and story, and kind of how you're all on the hook. None of you get to opt out and say, well, that's not what I do. I'm not a storyteller. Every single one of you are storytellers because you exist, and you exist here in this particular story. And for some unknown reason, other than his own pleasure, God gives you a pen. He gives you freedom. And of course, he's also the author from above who's written this whole thing. But he gives his characters this strange, culpable autonomy while you're down here in this paradox and this miracle of both being predestined and culpably free. You will be judged for your decisions and how you write your own stories, how you write your scenes, how you live in the presence of others. So you can't opt out. We could talk about all sorts of art, all different kinds of art. There's a lot of different forms, mediums, and so on that we're just not going to be covering because it's not for everybody. So not all of you are going to work in pastels. Not all of you are going to work with charcoals. Not all of you are going to make films. But all of you are going to write. Every single one of you is going to write. You're going to write your own scenes. And you're going to write the hardest kind of writing that there is, which is improv without edits. None. God's going to give you 1 second per second in which you can write your scenes, which you can write your dialogue, in which you can engage with characters around you. And then it's just gone forever and written down in the annals of time. Like it's just in history now, permanent. And his confidence and his pleasure in doing that is remarkable. But all that to say is you're here, you're writers, and so I'm gonna be emphasizing that aspect. So especially some of the written word, the powers of the written word, then moving all the way into being just better characters, better authors of your own scenes, and how we live in this pretty wild and complex narrative which he gives us. I'm going to try to break briefly about every hour, maybe 45 minutes, just kind of natural breaks as we take different bites. I would encourage you, if you have any questions, this kind of session where we cover a lot of material and we get to wander all over the place across most of a day is always better if these questions get asked. Some of the rabbit trails and distractions and things that are going to be provoked from the audience will be some of the most fruitful conversation that we have. So things that I have planned, I can march, I can keep on going. But if you have a question, I'll try to start each new section after a break with just opening it up for questions, curiosities, distractions. I could say there is no bad question. There are bad questions, of course. So don't screw up. But it is often the case that the thing that's provoked that feels like a distraction to you is not and is actually a fruitful thing for us to pursue. And if it's not, I'll just tell you that was a really stupid question. Don't do such things. I won't really do that. For those of you who are familiar with what I've written, some of this will be familiar, but hopefully fresh, hopefully brand new, fresh. When I start by saying something to a crowd, to an audience, where I would say, for example, the universe is a figure of speech. That's what this is. This is all spoken. It's easy for us to think like, oh, that's true. There's a way in which that's true. The universe is metaphor. It's a metaphor. One big, complicated metaphor. And you think, oh, that's a metaphor. He means that metaphorically. No, I mean that literally. I mean that as literally as I could say anything or as I can mean anything. So the universe is more of a metaphor than metaphors are. Metaphors down here in human language, where we take one image and we use one image to discover something about another image, and they are unlike each other, but like each other in some ways. We compare one to the other. that metaphorical relationship is a cheap, low imitation of what's happening on a cosmic scale. So this is a spoken world, and it is all something that tells us about its creator. All of it, metaphorically, is in relationship to the God who created it. Every single thing about it, every aspect of it, the whole big swirl, the dance of the planets and the electrons and everything else, all of it reflects its creator, and reflects its creator perfectly and imperfectly. So to the extent that in one snapshot, I'll just say, when you get down into a moment in time, some portion of it might not reflect the creator. The act of you slapping someone else, like just those 3 seconds, when you lost your temper and slapped the cop, don't do that. But in those 3 seconds, if I just take that and say, how does this reflect God? Well, it actually plays out in narrative. You have to expand it and see how he judges it, how he convicts, how he restores, how he forgives. Like all of it. You have to see the whole narrative of it for it to become the perfect metaphor, the metaphor that actually is not flawed, is not falling short. So when I say that, I mean this literally. I'm going to kind of break this down for you a little bit. This, I don't know what this is made of, but it seems to be some kind of metal substance, mostly. There's a little bit of wood, some plastic in here. Now, if we're going to break this down and say, what is this made of? Well, we have some metal, which means somewhere there was a mountain and the dwarves of our society blew the top off of it and like crushed all the rock, heated it up and pulled the metal out of it. You know, they got iron out of it. Later on, there was some alloy. Maybe there's aluminum in here. If there's plastic in here, well, what we did is we took all the forests before the flood and we scraped them off. We lifted them up, superheated them, and then pressurized them down with lava and under hundreds of feet of soil and turned it into petroleum, which you all rode this morning, unless any of you were riding around in those electric vehicles. Those would be powered by the friction of water running down through dams. So this, with some plastic in it, is made out of mountains that were smashed up and melted. Noah's flood, the forests crushed in Noah's flood. And of course, in the front, we have some wood. So here, this is made out of thin air. It's like, okay, how? Well, the star did it. The star that we're closest to did it. So if you actually, I remember this tripped me out somewhere in junior high when they were talking about trees that were, scientists believed trees were made mostly out of the soil for a long time. And so they began controlling, growth and weighing the soil and weighing the tree and watching this tree just gain mass, not from the soil as it grew. Like, how is this possible? Well, it's literally made out of air. So you walk over to a tree, you breathe on it, the tree grabs your breath, uses the power from the star, rips it in half, gives you back the oxygen, takes the carbon, and makes the wood, which is nuts. So it's legitimately crazy, and that's where we are. So I walk around, would go on book tours for my fantasy novels, and one of the things I would start with, especially with a bunch of bored students in some public school setting, you have hundreds of public school kids, you're trying to get them excited about reading or fantasy or anything like that. I would explain to people, and especially to Christians who are insecure in all sorts of stupid ways, that we live in a fantasy world. This is a fantasy world. If I could live in any magical world, Middle Earth, Narnia, fill in the blank, you can send me to Hogwarts, whatever. If I could pick any magical world, I would choose this one. This one's ridiculous. It's far more ridiculous than any of those places. So I could go find a snack somewhere. Is there any fruit out in the lobby? So I could go, is there an apple? Like, okay, I could go pick up an apple and be like, this was made by that burning ball of fire in the sky that we're careening around at about Mach 86, stuck to a ball of mostly lava with some crusty parts and water on the outside, and we're whipping around this ball of fire, and that ball of fire made this apple. The apple's literally made by star power out of air. And then because God is a strange and creative God, I look at it and I just know intuitively that where it belongs is inside the hole in my face. So I have this hole. I have this hole in my face and it's lined with bones. And because we're Americans, we need those bones to be straight if we can, and we need them to be white artificially if necessary. And we're gonna shove the thing made by star power into the hole in our face, lined with scar tissue. By the way, these little puffy scars. Smash it with the bones, push it down inside me, and then somehow there's a transference of the energy from a star into me. I now have energy from a star. And I get to come here and look at you and be all excited about this, and you are sitting there thinking, it's still early in the day. I can't quite get there. But that's the world in which we live. Like, we live in this strange place, walking around on a ball. And incidentally, I love basketball, and I love trying to see our civilization from way far away. You look at the planet, and you look at those among us at the Olympics who can jump really high, but you back up far enough, and you see this tiny little ant on the surface be like, ding, 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 ding. And we're like, whoa, gold medal. That person was able to get way off of this ball that's sucking us down. Somehow, we don't know how it works. We don't know how gravity works, but we gave it a name to take away the fantasy of it. We walk around by falling. So stick one out and let the planet pull me down. And that's how we move. Just controlled falls. All the way, just always. And every now and then, uncontrolled falls. And once a day, we're like, it's a little bit tiring. I'm just gonna let the planet just pull me down for a little bit. I need a soft place. I'm gonna purchase a soft place for me to just get sucked flat to the planet for a while. I'm gonna try to hold still for a number of hours at a time. It's very, very strange where we live. But it gets stranger. So I'll go to the wood here and say we know it's made out of thin air, carbon. But what is that made from? The mass, the matter. And we can start with the cells and go down to the molecules and get down to the atomic level. And we know things like those words, but we can't see those things, ever. We just operate on faith towards those guys in the white coats who assure us that down there on the atomic level, it's mostly nothing. There's a center, there's some things around the outside that go very fast, the speed of light. They're approaching the speed of light going around, but mostly it's not there. Mostly it's emptiness. But don't worry, that emptiness is moving very quickly. So the electron's going very, very fast. Now mentally, as a weird thought experiment, if I were to take a turboprop engine, some airplane engine, and sit it here, pointed up with just a blade, and I could sit here and tab speeds, make it faster and faster and faster. At first, it'd be very disruptive. Lots of noise, air flowing. If I started making it go around electron speed, it would just become still, and it would be a solid, and I could sit on it. And that's what you're sitting on right now. That's where we operate. It's mostly not there, but don't worry, it's going so fast that it's in more than one place at a time. So it takes on the characteristics of the solid. But what are those electrons made of? What are they made from? Well, I've heard a word called a quark before. I think we have some things called elementary particles. What does that mean? I don't know. Elementary particles basically means things that aren't made out of other things. But surely I could cut it in half and designate one half and the other half to be something. But what is it made from? What is it made from? And as you keep on going down to the bottom, you find that one of the only myths that's ever told you the truth, very, very few go here. The Christian myth, the true myth, is the one that tells you that it is ex nihilo, from nothing. The answer is nothing. There's nothing there. There's no turtle under the other turtle under the other turtle. So where I can't remember any society that actually really maintained this, but we have this picture in our heads, courtesy of Terry Pratchett and some other authors, of a time when people thought the world was on the back of a turtle, which is on the back of another turtle, which is on the back of another bigger turtle. And then finally somebody just kind of gets irritated with you and is like, listen, stop asking. It's turtles all the way down. It's just turtles. For us, we make our turtles smaller. We invert it and think it solves something. So we have bigger building blocks that get down to smaller building blocks, down to smaller building blocks, down to smaller building blocks. They're going very, 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 very fast. And if we're at the atomic level, there's so much power in one of those atoms, so much energy there, that if you were to split that, things would go very badly for all of Bettendorf. Just gone. And how many of those are in this room? Like, how many of those things, those atoms, that if you were to split them, there would be an enormous release of energy, power, all over the place. And we're just sitting here in this massive swirl of them. And what are those things made from? What are they made from? What's the next thing made from? And we keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller until we're down to, it's God talking. It's from nothing. We were told this. Ex nihilo creation is not just a lovely thought. It's real in your life right now. Like, you're sitting here made from nothing, and yet you exist. You've been called into being. And something here that's incredibly cool to realize is that Christmas was not special because a word was made flesh. That's what all of God's words have been made. When he speaks, incarnation happens. We are all incarnations. We are all words made flesh. The thing that was miraculous and amazing about Christmas was the infinite creator word was made flesh. The creator came and was made flesh. Not just all the creation, which was already made flesh, and already made flesh from his speech, from his words. Now, before we get too tripped out about this stuff, or just get distracted into the philosophical consequences of it, and there are plenty of philosophical consequences, the whole discussion around the problem of evil really just kind of evaporates. It goes away. Most of it, and most philosophy, assumes a kind of clockwinder deism. Most of it is an argument between people who are not thinking about creation and reality as if it is sustained actively by a creative God in the present right now. They're thinking about, how could God have done this, made this world in which this thing happens? It's like, no, it's actually not like that. It's much more immediate. How could God speak the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk? How could he hold that matter in existence, actively, creatively, in that moment as it took his life? It's not just like, oh, how could a world exist in which evil happens? It's, he made everything. Now, did he make evil? Well, evil, I would just tell you in this format, and this, once you start approaching it this way, evil doesn't even make sense. There's not some vat of black goop that is evil that gets on stuff. There are things which please God, and there are things which displease God. And those things which displease God are those things that we call evil, because they are evil. They're not in any kind of alignment with his character. They displease him. When you snap in traffic and yell at somebody, it's like, how could God create that? That driver of the minivan who has a temper. How could an all-good God allow you to be a jerk? Ever. The question is, how could an all-good God allow people that displease him? Things which displease him. It's like, well, again, back up. We're in a narrative. Remember what I said at the beginning about looking at something in a tiny little slice, trying to get outside of time? You have to look at the whole flow. and the fact that he sent his son to bear the brunt of his wrath and to pay that price that you've seen because of your own flaws, because of your own fallen nature, because of the whole story in which we live. There is a resolution, and an all-good God is bringing that resolution to be through his own suffering. Like he is resolving all these things. He is bringing beauty. So what is I could go down a whole philosophical rabbit trail here, and I'll briefly touch it. Leibniz loves to talk about the best of all possible worlds. And Voltaire made a lot of fun of him. How could this be the best of all possible worlds? Well, I really do think it is, in fact, the best of all possible worlds. But if you said, what's the best of all possible tools, you would have to first answer, for which job? What are we trying to accomplish here? Which object is better, a hammer or a thermos? Like, I've got a thermos, I've got a hammer. Which one's better? It's a stupid question, right? What do you need to do? Do you need to hit your thumb, or do you need to drink something? The hammer's way better for hitting your thumb. So you're going to try to drive a nail, the hammer's better. You're going to try to drink something, the thermos is better. What's the best of all possible worlds? It's like, well, okay, what's the best of all possible jobs? The best of all possible jobs is to glorify God, to image his nature, and to truly glorify him. This is that world. So I would say that there's a way in which you could say this is the best of all possible ways to the best of all possible worlds. Like, if you freeze it in time, it's not the best. If you look at the whole story and the fact that it will never end, that it has no ending, but we're going to be getting closer and closer and closer infinitely, because there is a infinite creator God who is telling a story which will fully image his nature. Now, the thing about being an infinite creator God is this is the one artistic task that he could never finish. There is no point at which the story will say, yep, got him. Fully captured every aspect of the triune infinite creator God. It's all been pictured. We're done now. It's like, no, the canvas continues to stretch. The canvas continues to stretch, and we learn more and more and more about him. And he is more and more and more glorified and imaged in this art in which we live. So, as we talk about evil, as you look at hardship in your own life, as bad things happen, when we were trying to go to the airport, my car stopped. We were going 77 miles per hour at the time, passing somebody else on the way to the airport, and my car turned off. It's like, conditions not right to shift message came up, and then it just died and turned off and said restart as I'm going 77 down the road. And it's at these moments that you remember what you're doing, where, again, we took that black goop that got made during the time of Noah, we pulled it up, we sent it off to factories that looked like Mordor with fire spitting out of the chimneys. They refine it into a heavy explosive. Because the federal government is moronic, they were like, you should put some corn in it. We take some corn from Iowa, and we infuse that corn into the explosive just to, make it worse. But we have this explosive, we go around, we complain about how much it costs per gallon. We have these big tanks underground, and we roll up in a machine on rubber, again, made out of petroleum from the flood. We roll up to it and we pay for a gallon of this highly explosive fluid. We put it into the box made out of metal, which was ripped out the inside of a mountain. Now, luckily, most of us have a magic key that we then use to start the fire. Yell at the kids or whatever. We have a little piece of fabric. If you're in some kinds of cars, they're really fascist. They will not let you remain unbuckled. Just ding, 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 ding. Sort of like you are riding explosives, the car wants to remind you. Please put a piece of fabric across your chest. It'll be fine. So, piece of fabric over, a little click, ignite the explosives. They go, and then we just ride around on them. Turn the wheel, and we press our face against the glass if we're a little kid looking at nicer cars than we have, being like, oh, be so nice to not be in this little Hyundai as it goes around. We are bizarre fantasy creatures. We really are. We lose track of what we're doing all the time. But in this ex nihilo creation of ours, step one is to remember that it's ex nihilo creation every single time you're facing anything. It is weird to me that the thing I hear Christians complain about the most is the one thing that they receive without all, like they can forget everything else I'm saying. They can forget that God made everything. They can forget that he's holding everything in existence every second by his creative will, that he has spoken and it's all been made flesh, and they're walking around inside of God's verbal art. They can forget all of that and still remember who gives them the weather. Well, obviously they're cloud seeding or whatever. But who gives them the weather? God does. The thing I hear Christians complain about more than anything else is that thing which they know they're receiving the most directly from God. It's just weird. And you go read the Old Testament stories about the Jews in the wilderness, and you're like, yeah, this really tracks, actually, because we could all be far more comfortable than them here today on these chairs in this room, and the weather could swing, and we could all walk outside and be like, oh, really, God? Really? Can't you just let all the plants die just this once? Just this one time. Oh, not that hot. That's too hot. Turn it, no, too hot. No, that's too cold. No, bring it back up. We need it to be kind of like Santa Barbara, not San Diego. San Diego's too hot. It's got to be Santa Barbara-ish. But not when the wind's blowing, because that's just, I get dust in my eyes. It's just too much. Like, we are the worst characters. We are the worst. At the same time, we're the funniest. So in those moments, we're farcical. We're like Dufflepuds in Narnia. We're just morons, like absolute morons. We can't see what's happening. We can't see how we're being sustained. We can't see that God is holding all of this in existence right now. And then what little we do see that he's doing directly, we complain about. We want it different. We want it more. We want a little bit better. Whatever it might be, we complain. We are pretty terrible characters. And every time you sin, every time you consciously sin, you have to become an atheist first. There's just this little apostasy where you're like, I'm going to go la, 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 and I'm going to pretend like God's not right here and like he's not holding me, and all of these chemical urges and everything else going on inside me. He's not holding all of this in existence, and he's not giving me freedom and this opportunity to choose righteousness or to sin. I'm just going to forget that he's here in order to sin. So let's go ahead and use an example. Some random guy. Let's say there's some guy who's struggling with porn, and he asks some guy for accountability. He wants some accountability partner, and the guy says, great, sure, I'll come. I'm going to be your accountability partner. And so he comes and just sits right by him, looking at him the whole time. And the guy's sitting here with a face right here just looking at him. And he's like, I think I might go to this dirty website. Really? With the accountability guy right there, staring at you, tapping you on the shoulder, being like, this is what we talked about. That guilt, that conscience. It's like, really, you're going to screw up. Some kid whose dad is watching him is sitting in the room with him. That kid is going to make that mistake while he's there. Like, while he's present, while he's watching. You're going to tell a lie while he's there, knowing the truth, knowing that you're lying. Really? You're going to slip and fall with that immediate presence? You really won't. It's not going to happen like that. The first thing you have to do is pretend he's not there. The first thing you have to do is start pretending like he didn't make you. Like these aren't made out of mostly peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and balls made by the star hanging on trees and all that. That he didn't make every single fiber of my being, that he's not holding it in existence. And I gotta kind of like imagine him away in order to snap and sin and just be stupid. I gotta become that atheist. I gotta get rid of the author as fast as possible so that I can sin real quick. And then I'll feel really bad and I'll be like, I'm sorry. Turn back around and invite him back in the room like as if he left in order to seek his forgiveness. We are very, very quick to forget the truth of ex nihilo creation. In fact, I think most of us don't even think that that is a doctrine that affects our daily lives at all. The idea of creation having been crafted by his speech only, that this is his spoken world. We don't think of that as like relevant to my average Tuesday, but it is. It's incredibly relevant. It's relevant to every single cell in your body as you make every single choice that you make. It's also, as he's crafting characters, relevant in receiving hardship, trial, suffering, pain. And a lot of us incidentally think that there was no pain before the fall. Side note, I don't think there's any chance that that's the case. Pain being just intense sensation. What do you mean there's no intense sensation? I think there would be plenty of very intense sensations. You would just be much better at handling it, at coping with it. Like you wouldn't be breaking down the same way. Death, destruction, the curse, yes. That all came in the fall, but is all part of the story. Now, before I kind of like move to the next layer of this, and there's a more kind of practical, but a little more granular layer, I'll say that there's one last piece of this is understanding beauty. And this will affect everything else we're talking about today. But God is telling a beautiful story. He's doing beautiful work. And he is doing beautiful work not for you. It's not for you. It's not about you, but he invites you into it. And he does give you lots of beautiful moments. And think about our level of distractedness and our level of ingratitude. When you happen to be walking back inside from lugging your, recycling out to the curb or whatever, because you're a good little citizen, and you see the burning ball of fire in the sky setting, and all the color going nuts, and the light coming in underneath the clouds, and you see that, and you got invited into that moment, and you're kind of like, back inside. Just walk away from it. And think about how many sunsets is he crafting? How many all the time? On how many planets where no one's ever going to see them? Like how many beautiful underwater coral gardens has he made that no one but him, like he will only ever be the only one to ever see this? How many sunsets on Jupiter are there that only he takes pleasure in? And then there's these moments that he invites you into. So for example, you're tired, you're in your bathrobe holding your coffee, and you get to stand there right there when the little paper delivery boy wrecks his bike. The wheel goes and he flies into somebody's trash can and lands in the yard. That should just be a moment that you share with God. Just you to stand there and be like, thank you. Because who else gave that to you? Like, it was for you. It was for you. That's it. Now, if sometimes you're the guy walking down the street and you kick your own heel and fall down, you roll around. First thing you should do is look around to see who God was giving this to. Find that person, high five them from distance. Like, yep, happy to fulfill this duty today. I get to bring you some joy. It's fantastic. Oh, but we really do. We need to realize that as we're navigating evil, as we're navigating hardship, that he's giving you scenes, he's giving you moments. He's given you chapters. He's given you tension. And if I was going to struggle with the problem of evil, if anybody here has even ever wrestled with it, you should realize that there is no problem of evil. There's no problem. There's some emotional heartburn that we have as creatures because we go through hardship and we're mortal and we all die. All of us die, and it's not the way it's supposed to be, and it will be fixed, and it has been conquered, and there is a resurrection. But creation is groaning, and we sit here wondering, how could a good author tell a story in which creation groaned? How could a good author tell a story that was full of mortals? It answers itself. If anybody likes Lord of the Rings, and everybody here is required to like Lord of the Rings, nobody gets to opt out of that. It's fantastic. But if I were to say, you know what, let's make this story a little better. Once upon a time, there were some hobbits. They lived in the Shire. I described their little corpulent selves and all their second breakfasts and how much they get to smoke. And those are the hobbits. The end. What? Where's the story? I need Nazgul. I don't just need like the trivial bureaucratic villains that we beat at the end. I need really, really scary villains. I need darkness. I need suffering. To really reach this catharsis and full beauty, to achieve beauty in the narrative, I need goblins. I need orcs. And I would never in a million years say, man, how could a good author like Tolkien allow there to be orcs in his book? How could an all good author, allow there to be Nazgul, allow there to be Sauron? Clearly, I should now embrace atheism and deny that there is an author. Clearly, there's an orc in this novel, therefore there is no author. Makes no logical sense at all. And yet that is one of the big philosophical greased pigs that people love to wrestle and be defeated by. Where they start being racked with doubt, like, oh no, I did stub my toe yesterday. How could an all-good, all-powerful God allow me to kick a piano bench in the middle of the night? It's like, I just want to know why he doesn't have you kick it more often. Like in my story, you would kick that thing every night. It would be a running gag in your narrative until you didn't have toenails. We wrestle with things that are just, ultimately, it's, Paul is the one who answers the question for us. Who are you, oh man? Like, you really think that's your homework to solve? How could an all-powerful creator God write a story that has tension, that has plot, that has good triumphing over evil, that has suffering? Of course he does, and of course he can. Now, one layer off of this, it gets extra weird. So, once we've really embraced the fact that God created everything from nothing, and he creates everything from nothing right now, like right this second, once we embrace that fact that he's giving things, trials to us, little things, rain, he's giving us heat, humidity. Once we embrace that this is all coming directly from his hand, we start to move into this praying without ceasing relationship with God. You start to converse with him constantly. And it's not just about the paper boy wrecking his bike. There's this immediacy to his creation, and you have access to him through your older brother, the firstborn into the resurrection. You can directly communicate with God. And it's an enormous luxury. You can speak with him. You can develop a relationship with him. And you can receive these things directly from his hand. It's like you're riding your bike and take a bug into the eyeball. It's like, well, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Like, blessed be the name of the Lord. Like, receive it from him. Receive these things from him. And once you start to live like that, like immediately like that, where you're not just kind of glad something bad just happened so you can text your housewife group chat and have the worst day of anybody. I'm winning the worst day Olympics over here. My baby pooped across the room. and you win the complaining contest that you have with your friends. Once you're actually just living like a great character, handcrafted by an infinite creator God, and you have access to him and can speak with him all the time, you really do start to. You find yourself receiving so much more from him directly, seeing his other characters around you and seeing them with a great deal more sympathy and affection. Even that cop that you wanted to slap. It's like it can be really, really fun when you start seeing who he's bringing into your life, and it's all improv. Now, improv is this horrible art form that we have. You know, we have aspiring actors get together and have their little improv troops, and they yell out scenarios and all start to like communally create. I can say it's horrible except for the fact that God does it to us all the time. Just all the time. You have these moments, and whether it's at the gas station getting your explosives or whatever it is, other people are there, other characters are crossing paths with you, you're being annoyed at other humans, and they're being given to you directly. But once you embrace that and you start living that way, you start to realize that what C.S. Lewis called subcreation for authors, like when I write something down, I'm stealing from God all the time. I'm never creating something completely from nothing. I can't do ex nihilo creation. I'm stealing. It's all scissors and glue for me. I'm running around grabbing things all over the place. You cannot find any true from nothing creation from any human. Like we're all just sub-creators. Now, you move there and you start to realize that your own words are also made flesh. And there's a power in them. And they're lesser flesh, but they're still physical objects. And we have this like post-enlightenment modern assumption that abstractions are a thing, that there is such a thing as just an abstraction, like something that doesn't exist down here with physics that interplays. So when I say something to you, I think like I have a thumb drive with information and I'm going to plug it into you and transfer some information to you. What's actually happening is that I have this bone cage right here. Mostly, like I said, in the past, made from peanut butter and great steak and other things. And inside this bone cage, I have a couple wind bags. And I fill them up. And I luckily have this really kind of wet tube here, and I've got some strings here and a big wet muscle up here. And I take the wind bags and then I create vibrations. Like, you know. And I shape those vibrations with the shape of the hole in my face and this wet muscle. And I create different objects. They are physical objects in the world. They have physics. Pop, 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 pop. All these different objects. And they fly through the air and they hit you in these little holes in the sides of your head. And there's a hammer and there's a whole bunch of things going on in there. But there's a physical reaction to words. I create physical objects and I throw them at you and they hit them. They hit you all up here in the upper bone, and the hammers buzz. And I can create a great cadence and a rhythm. I could start really having my words flow. And every single sentence has a score, has a soundtrack. All of it comes with percussion. And some of it's brass, and some of it's strings, and some of it feels really plucked. You can start hitting your consonants really hard, and you're more of a plucked instrument. Or you can just kind of drone, and you can be that set of bagpipes. But I'm creating physical objects. Those physical objects hit you in the head, and you have physical reactions. Have you ever read a scene in a book that gave you chills? Ever read a scene that made you hungry? Yeah, of course you have. You have physical responses. Now, when I'm writing, what I'm going to do is, hopefully, because I hate ebooks, but what we're going to do is we're going to take some trees and we're going to turn them into a pulp, and we're going to squish them into little fluttery squares, and then we're going to burn or dye symbols and shapes physically on the dead trees. And I'm going to hand them to you, and you're going to read, you're going to look at physical objects with your eyeballs, and your imagination is going to be engaged. And you're going to conjure up sensations, the same sensations that you would have had if I'm throwing things at your head directly from my windbags in my chest. Words have physics. All of you use them. So just like I encourage you to, become conscious of the fact that you have an infinite creator God directly handcrafting every single piece of matter in your life, every second of every day. Also, he then hands you speech. You're an image bearer. You talk too, he says. Now you do it. You go make noise. Go make noise that will affect people. Go make noise that will prove that you're terrible. Say really true things, but say them in ugly ways, such that everyone will know not to believe you. Like how you use your speech. Have you ever pursued any kind of verbal agility at all? Have you ever tried to get better with this medium that we are all required to use? This is the one art form that none of us get to opt out of. Words. And your words are made flesh. Little itty bitty flesh. But they are made flesh. They become physical objects in the world that have physical impacts on people around you. And so this is where I would say that you actually, all of you, should activate your minds to pursue a little more excellence in your speech. And I don't mean excellence in your speech like I should join Toastmasters, although some of you should. I mean excellence in your speech and realizing this is the art form that God uses to tell his story, that God used to craft this world. And he gave you the ability to do it as well. And you thought, I've decided to just squander that. So we have parables for this. God said to you, I've given you the power of speech. I've given you language and the ability to affect people around you with how you communicate truths. And you said, cool. And you set it on a shelf somewhere where you put gifts from your uncle that you don't really want. And then you just never pay any attention to it. And you go through life sucking at it. Thank you, God, for this gift of speech. I've decided to be bad at it my whole life. It's not a good approach. That is bad stewardship. That's something that you will answer for. I gave you words. What did you do with them? Remember that whole thing about complaining about the weather? I did a lot of that. A whole lot of whining. That's what I did. We have to start looking at words seriously. All of you have to be good at poetry. How's that? It's kind of like an overstatement, but you get the picture. You don't have to write sonnets, but if you started writing sonnets, you would get much better at your speech day to day. So one of the weird things about human speech, and we'll just focus on English right now, is that you're all much better at it than you know. So English has different stresses and unstresses. So there are syllables that are stressed, syllables that are not stressed. And poets are those, formal poets, not free verse. Formal poets are the ones who start to pay attention to those things and to arrange those cadences, those stresses. Now, English is a stress-timed language. And so what that means is that when you say a sentence like English is a stress-timed language, the word stress is stressed, the word timed is stressed, and lay is stressed in language, and would is not. So in English, stress-timed language, I'm gonna hit the same number of stresses per second as I speak to you. I am tabulating stresses and unstressed syllables, and when I hit the unstressed syllables, I accelerate, and I fit more of them in per second so I can get to the next stress, because we're hitting a metronome as we go. You're all doing this. All of you are subconsciously tracking stressed syllables and unstressed syllables, and you're all hitting the right number of stresses per second. And you can turn the tempo up and you start hitting more stresses per second, and you can slow it down and start hitting fewer stresses per second. But you're gonna hit it. And the reason why somebody speaking Spanish sounds very different and it's all just going quickly is because they are not stress timed. Spanish isn't at all. So they're hitting the same number of syllables per second. We hit just stresses per second in English. And it's weird that we do this, but we all do. And it's one of the ways that you can identify a non-native speaker. They're saying all the words correctly and you're getting the meaning, but the stress time is a little off. The cadences aren't quite right. And so you know that they're from somewhere else. And really, really gifted people can shift things in their heads and go to different language formats, and they can do it Spanish correctly, they can do English correctly, and so on. So this is just all stuff you're doing currently. You're all doing this because you all can speak English. And you don't pay attention to it. You've never sat down and worked at it. You've never sat there and said, I'm gonna figure out how to write iambic poetry or anything like that. And I would encourage you all of you are poets. Like I said, you're all writers, you're all characters in a story, you're writing scenes, you're all poets. You've all been given this power of speech, a power of language, and yet very, very few of us will ever try to get better at it consciously. We're more likely to train for a half marathon than we are to actually, which we should never do, by the way. Full marathons only, please. We should never really do that. But we've been given this and we very rarely pursue it. And I think we ought to. God is a poet. His prophets were poets. Christ is the poet. And the poetry that he crafts is beyond anything we could imagine. The poetry he crafts, whether it's the poetry of birth, poetry of death, whether you're walking outside and you're smelling rain hitting asphalt, the first rain of a storm, and you get hit with that smell and the cadence, the sound, the chatter of all the rain, all these poems constantly around you, rhythms and cadences. And then he actually says, hey, even more than that, I'm going to write it down for you actually in your language, in your words. Here it is. So out there, this is all me talking. This is all God talking. And we can go out there and we can listen to him and pay attention or not. But he also writes it down for us. And we can read his word or ignore it and not. And then he gives you language, and you're supposed to be good at it. You're supposed to get better. You're supposed to get as good as you can. So not all of you are capable of the same level, and he doesn't expect you to be. But there is a level of ability that you could achieve with your words, and only he knows what that is. Only he knows how potent you could be with your speech in imitation of him. And you should find out. You should pursue that. You should find your ceiling. You should write poems. And some of you are like, gay. Fine. Don't write the gay ones. Don't do it. You can skip that. But what is poetry? What is it? It's like, well, we're bad, we're stupid, we're a decayed culture, we've lost a lot of things at this point. We've wandered far from our inheritance. And so things like poetry, it's like, well, a greeting card? Is that what we're talking about? Well, no. Also, ironically, poetry cannot really be defined without self-contradiction, because one of the things we do as moderns is in our definitions, we want to get as soulless as we can. So let's take something beautiful and vibrant and let's try to describe it like a dead, dusty, dry thing. That's kind of what we do with poetry. However, even though we may not be able to determine the exact boundaries of poetry, nor do we really need to, it is important to actually kind of think through what you're talking about and to explore this stuff. One writer defined poetry as a patterned form of verbal or written expression of ideas in concentrated, imaginative, and rhythmical terms. I'm like, okay, not very poetic. A guy named Burton Raffel defines poetry as disciplined, compact verbal utterance in some more or less musical mode, dealing with aspects of internal or external reality in some meaningful way. Perfect, Burton. John Ciardi says, so for poetry, the concern is not to arrive at a definition to close the book, but to arrive at an experience. Okay, John. Which is just, you've seen that around, that kind of thing. It's about the journey. No. Judson Jerome allows that there is something to the definition which simply says poetry is metrical writing. Louis Turco defines poetry as the art of language. No, there's more to it than that. For my money, the best definition ever was from my father, which is a poem is a thought that comes out sounding good and lingers a while, but it doesn't have to rhyme. Though it could. Like, thanks, Dad. There we go. Solve the problem. So, but the thing is I want to talk about briefly is, and there's a lot for you to dive into here and a lot to explore, but the way English poetry works is that we have what are called feet in English verbal utterances. A foot is just a unit of poetry. So an I am, for example, is but it's like unstressed to stress, but And so this is where you could hear poems. There's a lot of poems where you'd hear, and it's kind of chubby. Like the language gets chubby. It's sort of a but-um. And Xanadu did Kubla Khan, a stately pleasure dumb decree. And it's just kind of, you start to hit the rhythm just kind of starts to go. That's iambic. Eternity and time confound the buckling minds of mortal men. There's this cadence. Now, incidentally, I'm not trying to say that you guys should talk like this. But you should be able to. I would encourage you, just like I would encourage you to do sit-ups and push-ups and things like that, I would encourage you to write formal poetry. To sit down and try to write a sonnet, 14 lines of iambic pentameter, which is 5 feet. So hexameter, 6 feet. So you're going to have 6 iambs, 5 iambs. You can get down to 4. Common meter in the English is a lot of times it's 4-3, 4-3, or 5-4, 5-4, where you have a long line and then you have a short line. If you can write a sonnet with extra challenges. And I hear there was a CrossFit contest this morning. Yeah? Yes. There was a CrossFit challenge this morning where people they construct what are known as voluntary obstacles. Right? They put things in their way and things they have to do that they don't really have to do. Like, you don't have to do that. But why do we do it? Why do people do it? It's like because the pursuit of something and tackling arbitrary challenges and obstacles makes you stronger, gives you more mental endurance, physical endurance, and so on. The same thing's true of language. So if you're going to see how many chin-ups you can do till failure, tire flips or whatever else it is, write a poem. Like how many lines of poetry can you write? How many poems can you memorize? And the 2 ways to do this are to read good poetry, memorize poetic lines, and try to craft it yourself. And as you do this, you will influence your own speech. Just like if you start training, you start winning little CrossFit contests, you could expect to not get as out of breath when you're at the mall. So you can become in better and better shape. Like you can become physically stronger, capable of handling more situations. The same thing's true of language. So if you're going to do this, and I would encourage you to do it, the real basic thing is just to introduce iambic, this but trochaic goes the other direction. Now the thing that's weird, because we're stress timed, a trochee basically is stress, unstress. But And if I give you a line of English, it's but-um. It's a very different sensation subconsciously than just but-um. Like but-um is nice and friendly. Trochaic is stressful and aggressive. And when you write things to people or you speak to people, if you know how to use these things, you will create subconscious effects, just like a composer of a movie. So when you come to your scenes and you're better with language, you will have all sorts of impact on people, and they won't know why. They won't be able to understand what it is. So a really extreme example of this is Churchill, who is extremely gifted verbally. He had some high pressure moments in his life, things he had to achieve, some important little speeches he had to write and deliver as England's existence hung on the balance. His very famous speech, "We will fight on the beaches, we will fight on the hills." He does this whole thing. He wrote the whole thing in words only with Anglo-Saxon roots. Like, he wanted it to have this aggression and this rough and tumble edge to it. He used one word that had a Latin/Norman root. And that was the last word, surrender. We will never surrender at the end. Everything else is Anglo-Saxon root words. That's how good he was. Like, that's how familiar he was with the English language, where he says, I'm going to do this, and it's going to feel very martial, warlike, courageous. There's going to be these hard edges, because Anglo-Saxon is that way. And on another level, the last time England was conquered was by the Normans, and so the only word I'm going to use with the Norman root is surrender, which is what we will never do. And to us, it was like, oh, that was a pretty good speech there, Winston. Most of the world just flows on, like never knowing what went into it. But the reason why it was powerful was because of all those layers that nobody saw. The cadence and the score and the music of it. Now, if you listen to it, if you actually ever go back and listen to a radio recording of it, his voice is weird. It's not musical. He is not a natural speaker with a strong, powerful voice, and it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can make excuses like Moses and be like, but I stammer. I don't have a good speaking voice. I'm pretty nasal. Whenever I listen to recordings of myself, I sound stupid. I can't believe everybody else hears me like that. It's like, yes, we all do. That's what you sound like. And that's okay. Like, because there's these cadences that you can pursue. So I-ams are badum, trochees are like stress down. An example would be from Macbeth. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Trochee, badum, 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 badum. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Later stolen by Harry Potter. Like, the effect of it is very, very different. So if you actually decide to start writing, and you should, and I'm going to guilt you into it, you should sit down, and I'm going to get to why you should be willing to feel stupid after lunch. It's okay. Let's just say Chesterton says anything worth doing is worth doing badly, and let's stick with that. So sit down with a piece of paper, try to find stresses. If you can't find the stresses and cannot figure out what's going on in poems, like, really just start by reading things, and start with poets like Lewis Carroll. Like, playful, childish poetry that's really chubby and inflated, and the cadences stand out. So it's cartoony. And if you are going to read the Jabberwocky or poems like that, if you're going to go into Coleridge, and Kubla Khan is a perfect one, start reading some classic poems, some old poems, and try to find the cadence. Try to find it, and then imitate it. Like, are you able to move your stresses on purpose and have them happen where you would like them to happen, as opposed to just wherever they come out? And this is step one towards being a good sub-creator with your own words, with your own writing. You do text people, right? Have you ever thought about the quality of your texts? He has. So, a little bit insecure, are we? Yeah. That's okay. You should. You should think about it. It's like, take no lazy reps. Just no lazy reps. You're sending verbal communication. Let's make it good. At least make it funny. At least brighten somebody else's day with it and how you're expressing yourself or whatever you're doing. You're playing with English here. No reps off. Always, always be pushing yourself. Now, if we're gonna go a little bit harder, so IAMs, trochees, there will be a quiz later. I'll hit the next two, then we'll take our first break. Anapestic. This one's harder to write, but when you do, it's like a dance. So what is an anapestic foot? An anapest is a 3-syllable word or 3 syllables in a row consisting of 2 unstressed syllables followed by a single stressed syllable. Ba-da-dum. Examples of anapestic words would be intertwine, cavalier, like 2 boom boom, like dun 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 dun, and it's hard to do. And when it hits, it's a lot of fun when people do it well. If you want to read a poem that uses anapestic, I'd recommend Byron, The Destruction of Sennacherib, which is just a great poem anyway. The last 2 lines, and the might of the Gentile and smote by the sword hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. But dun 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 dun, and it's very much a dance, like it's very waltz-ish. And beyond that is the dactyl, which is like the iamb to the trochee. A dactylic foot is a 3-syllable word or 3 syllables consecutively that straddle words, where you have 1 stress followed by 2 unstressed. So instead of the ba-da-dum, it's da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, the thing that's weird here is based on where you start as an English speaker, it changes everything. So if you jump into the middle of a poem and just look at the middle, anapestic and dactylic is identical. The same thing with iambic and trochaic. But based on our starting point, we track it subconsciously, and the stress is much more real once you start with the stress, that stress syllable. So if I start with ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you're tracking this tension and release instead of build up and punch. And it's 2 very different effects, even though basically provided by context, even though the middle is identical. So if you're doing dactylic, one example is from the poet Dryden. After the pangs of a desperate lover, when day and night I have sighed all in vain. Ah, what a pleasure it is to discover in her eyes pity who causes my pain. And iambic, da-dum, 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 that's usually the chubbiest, like nursery rhymes and fun stuff. It's also the one that people will notice the most. Trochaic, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Anapestic, da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Dactylic, da-dum, dum, da-dum, dum, and so on. So as you get like the top 500 poems, like get a volume of poetry and actually read it. Like don't just sit here in our culture like consuming stream songs off of Spotify, whether it's country music will actually use some of this more than any kind of pop music will, but they'll do it. They'll do it as well. Don't just consume really boiled down trite wordplay. Like start to push yourself to get in better shape than our culture demands of you. Like to push to that next level and to take the verbal gifts that God has given you and find out what they actually are. Like, can you do this? Are you good at this? And this is the CrossFit version of preparing to use words. The reason why I'm encouraging formal poetry is because you are all speakers in God's story. You're all creators verbally as well as with your life choices in the narrative around you. And you're not going to just get better at speaking without concentrated formal training. And so if you move away from the scenes at the gas station where you're talking to the cashier and you start writing formal lines of poetry and you're doing that kind of CrossFit training of your verbal agility, then when you're sending a text, when you're writing an email, when you're communicating to somebody at the gas station, you have just more linguistic ability. There's just more there. There's more strength, there's more agility naturally because you've built it up. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to hit this today with you guys is because it is in fact a big deal to be good with words. And even more so now that people are trying to turn their brains off more and more and more. So, you have an email to send? don't worry, we have a robot that can write that for you. The good news is I have a robot that can read it for me. So both of us can now successfully not communicate at all. You can not have written the thing that you sent, and I can not read the thing that you sent. And that's what's happening to our level of communication. So we take AI, which in its actual design is this averaging machine, basically, which it's trying to be predictive. It's trying to predict what you would do, and off of different sets. And then it goes inevitably down. So it always is going to be a step down and get you something kind of basic and competent, spit it out really fast. It's just a complete mind-numbing destruction of your own created abilities. So there's a Harvard, I'll leave you with this and we'll take our first 5-minute break. There was a Harvard study about the effects of AI usage on people, humans. It actually causes catastrophic brain loss. So you catastrophically will decay your own mind if you start using it. Immediately. Like you'd be better off smoking pot. Don't do that either. Like it is literally mind numbing. You can just turn off parts of your brain will start to atrophy immediately, with the exception of geniuses. So people who are way off the charts, geniuses, all they are, it's like you assign them a permanent personal assistant and they just get a lot more done. So geniuses don't see any decay at all, but the average people, and luckily we're all geniuses, right? So we can all use it to our heart's content. But it's the average people, it just really, really destroys you. And in this age of bot-created human communication, which is not human communication at all, I would encourage you to be able to lift your own weight. Like this is like WALL-E people time. Remember the movie WALL-E, where everybody's in those little scooters and their bone density goes way down? And that's where we are right now. This is that moment where CrossFit, yes, check. Do that. Walk physically places. Like move your bodies, but do the same thing mentally. Like go exactly the opposite direction the culture wants you to go. The culture wants you to become reliant on bots for communication and let your own linguistic abilities just rot out. And I would say go the opposite direction. Don't go on chat and say, write an iambic poem. Hey, I'm smarter now. It's like, no, you're not, actually. Do the opposite. More hard, human, organic work. Lean against where the culture is trying to take you right now. See your moment in time. We're all characters right here where we could just rely on this crap and become much worse humans, or we can go the opposite direction, become borderline Amish. In animation, I told some people, because I have a couple of animated projects, they were talking about using AI. And I said, I actually would rather this animation be done entirely by hand by Amish people. I want it more human, more physical, more of the incarnation, more of incarnational living, more of incarnational communication, not less. So lean hard against the currents of our age. We'll talk a little bit more about poetry, and then I'll leave you alone and move on to other uncomfortable topics. Let's take a 5-minute break and come back with any questions you might have. We'll chase some distractions and rabbit trails.